Off on this stairway. I'll just save the AK.
Thank you.
One more.
Yeah, there's actually multiple. I got 3. Oh my goodness, dude.
Man, these kids refuse to peek any window or anything.
It's because they're just dying.
No, dude, I just went huge there. Oh my goodness.
Snipers, 330.
Do you want to have crazy stats like these over here? Well, look no further, guys. I'm going to help you guys navigate some of the complicated HUD settings inside of Battlefield 6. And I really do think that these settings will help improve your game a lot more. And you'll be able to take out your enemies with ease and bring up that precious little score per minute in KD that everybody so cares about. But anyways, guys, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Primitive AK here, back with another video for you guys today. Today is another settings video, but today we're going to be focusing strictly on the HUD and HUD icons. I think there's a lot that people are missing out in changing these settings. Everybody typically has them as default. I did briefly cover it in my settings video when the game first came out, and I'm sure plenty of other friends of mine and creators have done so as well. But I wanted to do a deep dive on some of these settings because I feel a lot of people are ignoring them, and I think it's important that you guys clean up your HUD a little bit so you'll be able to see your enemies and deal with targets and objectives, more importantly, a lot easier. So we're going to go ahead and dive right into this. You're going to jump into your accessibility settings first. And what we're going to do is, before we touch anything involving our actual HUD, we're going to change our color profiles. Now, color profiles are essentially just icons, like friendly icons, your squad, enemy, neutral, and other important icons on the map. So basically what I did and what I recommend, these are all set to like default dullish type colors. When you guys reset this back to default, I recommend changing them to a brighter version of the color that is already there. So for example, we had like a neon green for our player color. I changed this to, it was like a dullish neon green. I changed this to a much more vibrant green just so that way it sticks out more. I do play on a 4K monitor, so this will help things stick out a lot more, especially if you're on an OLED monitor or an IPF or an IPS monitor. So definitely make sure you change these because, like I said, these are relatively dull colors right out of the gate. Of course, if there's a different color that you would like to change it to that is not what you see here, that is, of course, personal preference. But I recommend just keep it simple, stick to what you know, and keep it just a brighter version of the color that's already there. That'll make things a lot easier in terms of seeing things. Next up, you're going to want to turn down your world brightness. I put this down to 45. Things just get way too out of control with the brightness in the sun. Developers love the sun, so I just recommend turning it down entirely. Next up, you want to make sure these settings are copied pretty much to what I have here. Reduce sprint camera bobbing. This is absolutely a annoying thing. I can't stand it. I wish we could take it out entirely, but it just makes the game feel more realistic, and I don't really care for that, especially when I'm playing it on a competitive scale. I just want my game to be stable and be able to see people when I have to. Now, in our interface and HUD settings, you're going to want to make sure that you're in the graphics tab, and you're going to head to interface and HUD. Obviously, make sure show HUD is on. I would only ever turn this off if I'm like taking screenshots for thumbnails. Infantry HUD motion and vehicle HUD motion, turn these off. This is basically just going to make sure that your camera isn't shaking, or not your camera, your HUD isn't shaking when you sprint, because your HUD does actually shake as you're sprinting in the game, which again is only there to make the game feel a little bit more immersive and more realistic. If you're looking to actually improve at the game, then turn these off. However, if you want your game to feel more realistic, by all means, leave it on. You know, you do you. I personally don't think it's needed at all, especially if you want to get better at the game. So just turn these off. Moving on, we're going to head over to advanced HUD settings. And then you're going to head over to horizontal HUD padding. I set this down to 0. This just makes it so that way your HUD is moved over to the edges of the screen as much as possible. As you can see, when I turn these up, you see how it kind of pushes it inwards. You don't want that, obviously, so make sure that's set to 0. I believe this is like, I think it's like 5 or 10 by default. I don't remember the exact number. I don't want to reset its default because I changed a lot of stuff here. But just make sure this is set to 0. When you have this, it has show kills made by. I actually usually set this to all. Now, usually what it does is it's set to squad and nearby, so like it's only going to show kills that are nearby your area. And while this isn't bad, actually, I recommend just putting this on all. I like to have all the information in front of me. But of course, if you're someone that's like going for montages or something like that, you may just want to leave this on squads nearby. That way your kill feed doesn't get split if you care about that kind of thing. But like I said, it really just comes down to personal choice. I tend to flip-flop between squad and nearby and also all, only because when I'm running around in a certain portion of the map, knowing when someone dies in my specific area can be useful information. So that's why I said this one really comes down to personal preference. At the very least, I would recommend just leaving it at squad and nearby. However, if you want more information, you could set this to all as well. Kill feed icons, obviously set that to on. Ping notifications, I would turn this off. This is basically going to make sure you don't get ping notifications in the kill feed. I don't like that. I don't feel the need for that, so we're just going to leave that default. Minimap size, I'm going to set this to large. I like having a large minimap. The minimap is everything. The minimap is power. You want to make sure that you have your minimap as visible as possible, so set this to large. Background opacity, set this to 90. Cone opacity, set to 15. That's basically your player cone, or your field of view cone opacity, so that way it doesn't take up too much of your screen. Cone edge opacity, set this to about 40. View rotation, that should be on by default. Interior zoom, set to off. View distance on foot and in-ground vehicle, I set this to 250, and view distance in air, I set to 300. When you're in the air, you need as much view as possible. Big map opacity, this is when you pull up your mini-map, or not your mini-map, but your big map when you pull up the scoreboard. Set this to about 90. You don't need it too big, or too much opacity there. World log show resources are set to off, and then show loot, and then show game mode events. This is primarily for like Warzone and stuff, whatever you want to call it. I'm calling it Warzone, don't judge me. But the Battlefield BR, that's primarily what this is for. So just leave this by default for now until we can figure out exactly what it does. Simplified squad lists, I would just put this off. This is basically going to like hide some information on your squad. I don't recommend leaving that on for now. You need, like I said, the more information, the better. Vehicle HUD, like I said, these are the same colors that are already in the game. I just set them to brighter colors. That's just my personal preference. Don't recommend changing any of these to any other color. Just keep it on by default. But if you want some freaking anime pinkish color, I don't know, by all means, go for it. I just like to keep things simple and just go for brighter versions of what's already there. In terms of hints, I usually leave all these on. I don't really feel the need to change them. That's just my own personal preference. But if you don't want hints, you could go ahead and turn them off. Now moving on to the next category, which is icons and indicators. You're going to want to make sure icon intensity is set to about 60. And then we're going to head over to the sub menu here for HUD icons. You're going to want to make sure ping hints is on. And this is where we're going to go ahead and get through the nitty and gritty here. So I'm not going to go through every single individual setting as to what they do and what they're for. But I would recommend that you copy the most important ones here. And we're going to try to look at some of the more ones that I have here. So peripheral zone size and also scaling center scale. Set this to 50 and then 10. Opacity, peripheral, and center, set these to 100. Zone size and center scale for opacity scaling and peripheral, 50 and 10 again. Opacity peripheral when zoomed, and opacity central when zoomed, set this to 67 and 20. This is basically going to adjust the opacity at the center of the screen when you're zoomed in, and this is going to adjust the icon opacity at the edges of your screen, where icon transparency is usually affected when you're zoomed. So this is primarily for zoom indicators. And objective icons, this is things like your A, B, and C flags, or your objectives when you're playing breakthrough. Objectives icon scale, set this to 100. You don't want to make these smaller than they already are. You can scale it up if you want, but I just keep it on 100. That's more than enough for me. Icon opacity, set this to about 80. You just don't want to make sure that when you're shooting players, that your objective icons aren't blocking the view of that. That was happening to me a bit, so I wanted to bring this down to about 80. Now, when you're zoomed in, this is where you want to bring it down even further. So if an icon, like I mentioned, if you're aiming at a player and your HUD is suddenly blocking this player's view, you want to make sure this brings down to about 40. So that way it doesn't take up, it doesn't get in your way of other players that you're aiming at. And occluded, bring this down to 20. When it's occluded by other objects such as vehicles or players, bring that down to about 20. Friendly icons, you want to make sure you can see your teammates, set this to 100. Friendly icons opacity, set this to 60. And then when you're zoomed in, set this to 40. Like I said, you just want to remove the clutter from your screen. You're going to want to copy the exact same settings for when you're reviving players, 100, 60, and then 40. For squad icons, you want to make sure you see your squad. That's most important. Now, this is where personal preference may set in. If you are a very heavy squad player, and, you know, I'm a pretty heavy squad player as well, you may want to opt for turning up some of these settings so that way you have more focus on seeing your squad teammates. But I personally just like to leave everything uniform to what is here. So I set this to 100, 60, and then 40. And then for revive, 100, 60, and then 40. Enemy icons, you want to make sure you could see your enemies. This is the most important thing out of all of these. Set these all to 100. Neutral icon scale, these are things such as like turrets that are unmanned or unmanned vehicles where everything is essentially gray. Make sure this is set 160, 40. You don't really need to change anything dramatic here. I keep this the same to what I have for squad icons. Just keep everything simple. Ping marker icons, I need both myself and my teammates to be able to see my pings. So I set these to 100. Obviously, this only applies to you. This doesn't apply to your teammates. I know I explained that weird. But make sure this is set to 100 across the board so you can see your pings, because pings are pretty important, especially when you're with an organized squad. And then you want to go ahead and back out of that menu, scroll down again in the graphics tab and head over to icons and indicator. And then we're going to head over to crosshairs. Crosshair opacity, we're going to set to 100, and then crosshair intensity, which is essentially the outline of the crosshair, we're going to set that to 85. Crosshair color, you could change this, honestly. I'm thinking about changing it, but for now, I just have it on white. But again, this one comes down to personal preference. Crosshair thickness, I set to default, and infantry crosshair projection, I set to on as well. Hit indicator, for hit opacity, I set to 100. I obviously need to know when people are being shot at, or when I'm shooting at players, so set this to 100. And then hit indicator intensity, we're going to set this to 80. Hit color, I'm going to keep at white for now. I might change that. We'll see. But headshot indicator, I actually changed to yellow, so when you get a headshot, it sets it to yellow. And honestly, I really do like it at yellow. It kind of lets me know if I'm dealing extra damage to players. Granted, you do obviously know that if you get the double hit marker version, so that way you know that or the double line icon, which shows that you hit a headshot, but changing that color will help as well. Kill color, I set to red. And armor, we're not going to worry about this for now because this is for the BR when it comes out, which is not out right now. Hit indicator numbers, I set to on. I like to be able to see what damage I'm dealing to a player so I can see the bullshit in real time. Hit indicator number opacity set to 100, and then size set to small. Indicator number horizontal offset I set to 10, and then vertical I set to 50. Damage indicator, I keep these on default. I don't feel the need to change these. But as far as I'm concerned, that's about it. And I know this doesn't really apply to like HUD since I covered it in the settings video, but field of view I have to set to 110. I might change this to 105 just so I could keep it uniform to like Call of Duty, for example. But for now, I keep everything as is. And like I said, this will help out. Chat, I always set to when active. I kind of like to see the shit talk. That's just a personal preference. And I also like to see if my teammates are going to call out to me. You know, if they may not have a mic. Seeing this information can help out. So I recommend you just keep that as is. But these are my chat settings. I don't know if it really matters that much to HUD. But for those that want to see it, that's pretty much it. And that's pretty much it, guys. Let me know what you guys think about these settings. Like I said, these HUD settings have helped me out immensely in terms of just getting rid of clutter from my screen, because there is a lot that goes on in this game, and I think a lot of people may be overwhelmed with some of the stuff that goes on in the game. So I think changing some of the visibility of your HUD will make your gameplay a lot more smooth. And anyways, guys, thank you guys for all the love and support. I will catch you guys in the next one. It's your boy Primitive AK, signing out. Peace out, fellas.